Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. In Brazil, it's good morning. Good afternoon, good evening to those of you wherever you are. Today, I'm in one of my favorite subjects. I'm one of the teachers, professors here at the Keppe and Pacheco Triological College. And right now, I'm at our campus in Minas Gerais, in Cambuquira of Minas Gerais, in the middle of Brazil. And believe it or not, every day we see tucano birds around here, around the campus. It's unbelievably tropically beautiful here. Cannot complain. and so I'm one of the teachers of the arts department. And I have an upcoming course that we're going to do. It's a 10-hour course, and it's certificated by the Keppe and Pacheco Triological College, all about the arts. And we have a kind of profound analysis that really helps people because we apply the science of Norberto Keppe, this extraordinary scientist, Austrian Brazilian scientist, because he has made a unification of the sciences with philosophy and with theology. That's why we call it a trilogy, analytical trilogy, because it's the unification of these three pillars of society. And so when you apply this science to artistic questions, it's unbelievable the revelation that we have. We study the real role of the arts in society that until today society doesn't understand very well. There are people who love the arts, and they know that it's important, but the actual role of the arts in both psychological life and in social life, it's a revelation. It's not very well perceived until today. And I have to say, with all honesty, that this science is more profound in relation to the arts than anything else I've ever encountered. And, I've lived in 6 different countries. I'm American, yeah, and working with Analytical Trilogy, we were in Europe for 9 years working there in different countries. And I'm a pianist. I've been involved in the artistic world my whole life, since 6 years of age until today. And so I kind of know what's going on in the artistic world. And nobody has the type of analysis in relation to the arts that we have. Just to boast a little bit, because it's real. This exists. So maybe, for example, let's put up the first slide, Eduardo, that we can take a look at today to begin our class for today. I've taken this from one of Norberto Keppe's television programs. He has hundreds of programs that he's made, and I really like this slide because it shows something of what is the good action of the human being. It represents our good action, or pure act. It was Aristotle who referred to the Creator as pure act. I really don't know if as human beings we're capable of pure action or not, but at least the good action we are. We always have a kind of mix of doing good things mixed with our pathology that we don't perceive very well, and sometimes the outcome isn't as good as we would like it to be. But anyway, we try our best. And one of the things that our college has is we differentiate between what is the essence of the human being and what is his pathology. So let's see here. I'm hoping that you can see this little arrow on the screen. So this represents what we are as human beings. One of our essential things to our nature is action, good action. If you stop the human being, he becomes ill. And so here we have 3 essential elements. Do you see on the right side we have reason, or in social terms it's philosophy, thought. On the other side we have love, an essential element here, feeling. In social terms we can say maybe theology, spirituality. So we have these 2 essential elements. One is here thought, and the other is feeling. I think everyone knows that we have thought and we have feeling. Now, this third element up here, up above, beauty, aesthetics, this is an essential element in our good action, beauty. And in fact, what this line shows here at the top is that it connects these other two elements, thought and feeling. For example, can we come back to take the slide down for a moment, and then we'll put it back in a second. For example, have you ever had the experience where you had to decide something important, and by the logic you would decide this, and by the feeling you would decide this, so you don't know what to decide? Have you ever had that experience? This shows a kind of lack in the aesthetic, with an involvement with beauty, with the arts. The more we develop this aspect, the more that our thought life and our feeling life unify. They unify through the arts, through a contact with beauty. Do you perceive? This is why in Keppean science, our definition of aesthetics is inner psychological equilibrium. Aesthetics is our equilibrium. It's our inner balance, let's say. Okay, so going back to the slide, just taking a look at this. Do you see up at the top here? Here we have aesthetics that's connecting these other two elements. This is our equilibrium. This is what gives us a pure act or good action, as good an act as we can in the things that we do. And just to mention, we can take it down now. Just to mention, if you stop the action of the human being, what happens to him? This is our essential nature, is good action. Have you ever noticed somebody who stops or retires and then they don't have anything else planned for retirement, so they just stay stopped? Well, they can arrive in the cemetery within 2 years, It's not good to be stopped. And right now we have this kind of, it seems like there are people who are trying to do a lockdown on our lives, to stop us from working, from being active, staying in your house. There's nothing worse for the essence of the human being than to prevent him from acting. This is a really tremendous evil, to imprison the human being so that he cannot act. This is not a solution for anything. And in fact, if you stop the human being, he becomes ill. Mentally, in terms of his feelings, psychologically, he becomes imbalanced. And we are noticing during this time, there's a lot of domestic violence. The human being, he cannot be stopped. He must be in good action. It's his nature. It's his essential nature. Now, let's see. I hope today we can have some time to take a little bit of look at the benefits of unification, of unifying. Whatever your profession may be, if you can unify your profession or elements of your profession with something else that is real, then you'll have a superior result. For example, Norberto Keppe, he's a scientist. He's a psychoanalyst, essentially, and a social scientist, and also an independent physicist. And then he is also a philosopher, a theologian. When you unify, then the results become actually more with our nature, more conducive to our nature. And so I would like to show an example of unification in the arts. What happens when you unify real things that exist, unify one to the other, and then you have a third thing. Let's see, maybe I can do it here with my hands. Let's say here you have one element, here you have another element. Okay, both of them are good, they're real, they exist. If you can unify, if you can do a type of dialectic, not an eclectic thing, a dialectic, so that you arrive at another conclusion, then this third element, it's greater than the two parts. Do you perceive? You unify two real things in order to arrive at something that is more according to our nature. Let's say less divided. So today, I would just like to give one example of how this works in the arts, specifically in dance. Okay, I'm going to show us 3 different types of dance forms, and let's see your opinion, what you think, if they can be unified, if that's possible or not. For example, I would like to start with an example of ballroom dancing. Now this is a slow foxtrot. Apparently this couple, they won first prize at some kind of a international event. And notice how it shows how 2 human beings can move as one, as though you're like one being. It's very interesting, this. Let's take a look at an example of ballroom dancing, okay? You can just let it go.
HaveTwisted.com.
Okay, so here we are. Apparently they already won the prize, and they're just kind of doing a last minute dance for us. Okay, observing this example, we see, first of all, elegance. This is something in our society today that we've lost. You know, elegance, it's an essential aspect of beauty. You can't live without elegance, this aspect of beauty. It's something essential in our lives. But we have like the inverted idea that it's an option, it's not necessary, only if you have the money for it or whatever. You know, elegance is elegance. It's something intrinsical to our nature. Now, do you notice how can 2 human beings move as one in this way? It's very interesting how they accomplish that. And they seem to be like floating around. It's this type of ballroom dancing. And there's a principle involved here. How can 2 people dance exactly in harmony together? You know, without stepping on other people's feet or tripping or falling down even, you know. How can you do that? You know, one leads and the other follows. That's the secret. If one is leading and the other follows, you move as one entity. It's a kind of a human principle. It exists, this. It's a reality. Actually, it's a universal law, which can be applied to other spheres. And here we see this in the arts, this principle. Okay? So now, let's compare this ballroom dancing to a type of dance that is completely different. In English, we call it tap dancing. I believe in Portuguese, sapateado, tap dancing. And it's a completely different thing. And you'll notice that the style and the whole objective of this type of dance is different. Remember, keeping in mind, we want to see, is it possible to unify these different types of dancing? Is that possible or not? Now, this example of tap dancing by the Nicholas brothers, it's kind of exceptional. It's not a good typical example of tap dancing, because these guys are just extraordinary. they were the best tap dancers ever in history that we know of. And they were brothers. And they do things, it looks even inhuman what they're able to do. Okay, but anyway, this is from an old film, an old Hollywood film from the 30s. And it's just a great example of what is tap dancing. Let's take a look at this. Look at this. What is this? Okay, you know, the first time I saw these guys, I was asking myself, what planet are they from? You don't see this type of tap dancing anymore, this level of dancing. And in fact, this is even already a type of unification because they're also very acrobatic. It's a kind of a little bit of acrobacy mixed in with this tap dancing, mixed in with an extraordinary choreography, the kind of scene that they're dancing on top of pianos and stuff. It's very interesting. And you know, just referring back to our first example of the ballroom dancing, I was thinking this question of how two people can act as one. It's an energetic thing. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, if you've ever done some ballroom dancing, and sometimes you'll be dancing with a partner who doesn't accept to lead. In fact, the other wants to lead, or else they're doing their own thing. You know, they're dancing something different than what you're doing, like Popeye. I don't know if you know the cartoon Popeye when he's dancing with olive oil. They're dancing two different things together. You know, it's very comical. And it's an energetic thing. Sometimes you can dance with a woman and you have to really work at making her follow what you're doing to the degree where your arms start to get sore and tired because, she just won't go where you want to go. And then there are others who just follow you completely. Whatever you do, they're following. And so then you become one. The energetic factor becomes very interesting at that point, where two people are entering into the music. One is leading, one is following, and you become like one entity. The energy of that is extraordinary. And I'm sure you could apply that to daily life. It's an energetic factor that already exists in the nature of the human being. Okay, so this second example of tap dancing, we see that it's another type of thing. It's a kind of happiness that is really up. We just say that it's up. The other one was sheer elegance, and I saw some comments. Some people were commenting that, elegance is beauty and beauty is elegance. If you have any questions, you can put a question here in the timeline, and at the end, I'll try to answer as many as we can get to. Okay, because the observations here are very interesting. So now let's see a third type of dancing, which is also completely different. This is an example of ballet. Okay, ballet is a choreography. In this case, it's a pas de deux. It's a dance for two. Okay, now it's unlike social dancing, the first one that we saw. It's very unlike tap dancing. There's a choreography going on where they are following steps, and it's more an emotional way to transmit the relationship between one and another. In this case, it's from the Tchaikovsky ballet Swan Lake. No, I'm sorry. Romeo and Juliet. This is from Romeo and Juliet. So here we have Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is the great Russian dancer, Nureyev. And Juliet is the great English dancer, Fontaine. And really interesting, Fontaine was just about to retire. She was 45 years old. Nobody in ballet dances until you're 45 years old, but she was an extraordinary woman. She did it. And then suddenly she met Nureyev, who defected from Russia at that time. He was a young man. And she danced another 15 years with Nureyev together. And they were extraordinary, a couple of pas de deux in the world of classic dance, classic ballet. And I'm just going to show a very short clip, just so that we have an idea of the difference between ballet and these other two styles that we just saw. And notice there's one point where suddenly they stop dancing and they're just looking at each other. And notice the transfer, the energetic, the transfer of energy between the two that happens, even though they're motionless. This is set up by the previous dancing that they do. And just take a look at how energetically they are dancing with each other. Now, it's a little bit dark, the scene, because it's at night. Romeo comes at night to see Juliet, and she comes out from her place, and they dance together. Okay, so it's a night scene. Let's put this 9 minutes and 30 seconds in. Okay, Eduardo's going to find it's around here, 9 minutes and 30 seconds in. We can start from here. Look. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, around here. Nureyev was both a very strong individual and very expressive. This combination is kind of unusual in ballet for men. And Fontaine was already a famous ballerina. I don't know how old she is here, but she's more than 45. A little bit of inspiration for us. They make these steps look easy. There seems to be no gravity involved. Look at this. Okay. You see, it's a different type of dancing. It's a choreography. One of the comments here was, is that Margaret Fontaine? Yes. Fontaine, Margaret Fontaine, and Rudolf Nureyev. Somebody put there, she died in 1991. Yes. She was a legend in the world of ballet. Somebody else here also commented, why don't we have this kind of art like Beethoven, Michelangelo nowadays? This is a very good question, and I can't answer that like in just one sentence. But if you want to participate in the upcoming course, we go into detail, we go into depth. For example, where there's another comment here?
No, it's on the chat. So the link for the course.
The link for the course is in the chat. You know, for example, why? This is a really good question. Why don't we have? Where are the Beethovens today, and the great dancers, or even this great tap dancers as we saw today? This level of art, we just don't have it anymore. There's no classical art today. There's no more contemporary classical art. It's stopped. So what's happening? And we study this in depth. There are answers to this. There is understanding. There is consciousness. One of the things is social values come from the arts. If we're losing our social values, this is a sign that the arts are going down. They're not developing, and they're not at a standstill. They're in decay, really. Fortunately, we have some wonderful exceptions, but in general, as a society, as a civilizations of the earth, we're in a decadence in relation to the arts. And so this is a very interesting subject to see the difference between what is art anyway, what is real art, and what are some of these things that happen that people say, for me this is art, but it doesn't connect with the essence of the human being. What is that? And we'll be studying this in the upcoming course. You just need more time to lay a foundation so that you get consciousness of the reality of these things. Consciousness is different from knowledge. It's different from knowledge is one thing. Consciousness, it's an opening of awareness that includes knowledge and it includes feeling and intuition. It grasps the vision of things. Yes, okay. So actually this course will start next Wednesday evening. It's at 8 o'clock in the evening. And I already passed along, let's say, the kind of homework to do. Because 5 hours are online, live online. And 5 hours you have things to do. I've put some really good videos for you to analyze with some multiple choice questions, so that you can get into the subject. And then we can talk about it in the online part of the course. Okay, so the question is this. What do you think? Is it possible to unify this ballroom dancing that we saw? Yeah, two people moving as one. Can that be unified with ballet, this type of choreography? Unified with tap dancing, is that possible? One of the great successes of the old Hollywood, And I really emphasize old Hollywood because the Hollywood films nowadays are very much, how could I say, there are other interests involved. It's been bought up by economically powerful people, and they send out messages that are not very good for humanity in most of the films. But back in this time, in the 20s, 30s, and maybe in the 40s, when filmmaking was done in the studio, there was very little thing done on location. Everything had to be like aesthetically controlled, like a painting. You know, everything that you saw had a composition, had a visual composition to it. And so filmmaking was considered to be an art form, especially with the musicals of the day. They were very, very popular worldwide. And one of the reasons why these musicals were so successful is because old Hollywood was a continuation of the French Belle Epoque, which was destroyed with World War I. You know, there was a distant, how can I say, a development that was happening from the Romanticism, which was really the high point, the apogee of artistic culture on our planet. From there sprang a couple of different types of styles. And one of the great ones was the French Belle Epoque. And it was destroyed with a world war. Wars can put a country back at least 50 years. And so when they discovered how to make film and then how to make sound with the film, they said, well, what are we going to do with this? So they made a continuation of the French Belle Epoque because they didn't know exactly what to do. And it was highly successful, the type of unification that the artists of the old Hollywood were doing. At that time, you had to know how to dance, you had to know how to sing, and acting. Everybody had to do the three. You know, some people were better in one aspect than the others, but everybody had to act, sing, and dance. Now, I'd like to show you a clip of an example. This is Fred Astaire.
What happened?
Okay.
Fred Astaire, go ahead.
Yeah, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. They were a very famous dance couple. And this is from one of their films. And take a notice, see if you can notice that they are unifying choreography, balletic choreography, with ballroom dancing, with tap dancing. They've made a unification of the three. Normally when they unify the three, there couldn't be like an emphasis more on one than the other. But you see if you can notice all three aspects of this dance, of this unification, and see what you think of this. So, okay, Eduardo, let's put this around here. 2 minutes, I think. That's fine. 2 minutes. A little bit before. Good. 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 Here we have a little tapping going on. Sheer elegance. They're moving together like ballroom dancing. This type of dancing was never seen before. Unification dance. And that's one of the reasons why it was so successful. Okay, so in your own profession, in your own life, you can know that if you unify what you do with other elements that are real, then if it's really truly a dialectic, if you're sensitive enough to make a dialectic process, then the result is always something superior, something more interesting, something more useful to the human being. Okay? That's why this dance was like so amazingly popular in its day. People internationally, they just waited for the next Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers film to come out because they were showing the possibility of living something more in relation to what the Creator has left for us to live, and not this highly pathological situation. For example, trying to live in a lockdown where you're not allowed to act. You're not allowed to have good act or pure act, as we saw in the beginning. Now, there are some comments here that, let's see. Will you give more examples of the great artists in the upcoming course? Yes, this course, not only more artists, but from different epochs. We'll see medieval, Renaissance artists, Baroque, Rococo, classical art, Romanticism. Romanticism was amazing. Impressionist and contemporary. We'll study some masterpieces of each of these epochs, and always relating them to a Keppian concept in relation to the arts. Through the years, I've collected 15 different original perspectives, I say Keppian perspectives, of Norberto Keppe about aesthetics and the arts that you don't find anywhere else. They are original perspectives. And when you put them all together, you get a consciousness of what is the real role of the arts that you won't find anywhere else. And it's amazing. What is the necessity of art in our lives? It's absolutely amazing. I remember one time I was giving a lecture and I said, art is very important. And Dr. Keppe himself, he corrected me. He said, no, art is not very important. It's fundamental. It's vitally necessary for the human being. And so, how can we get the reality of that, the consciousness of that? I'll really do my best to try to transmit that. Somebody else says, you speak slowly so it's possible for us to understand. When I'm with my brothers in Pennsylvania, you won't be able to understand us talking. There's an international English that is different from native speaking, whether you're British or Australian or American. If you're a native speaker, you speak your native tongue with native people. Otherwise, this other international English, it's different. It's an international English, and so you speak differently. You use less slang and less phrasal verbs and things like this, and you have to enunciate, you have to speak clearly and not so fast. because it's everybody's second language. We're all in the same boat, people who are using English as the international language. So you learn how to switch to the international English. That's the way it is. Okay, in this moment of the lecture, I would like to hear a little bit about music like the way to achieve consciousness. Oh, somebody else says, she looks like a dancing feather. La plume. Yes, it's just, there's no gravity. Or so it looks that way. You know, really, dancers are known to, their feet are bleeding in their shoes. You know, the work behind producing works of art is incredible. It's extreme. If you want to perfect your art form, you really have to work at it, even if you're an incredible talent. Yes, what I will do in this course, answering this question here, I will make a dialectic between music and the arts and Keppian science. This is the dialectic that takes place. And what happens is you arrive at a consciousness that you won't arrive at with just a lecture or with just the art. But making a dialectic between the two, it produces a consciousness really interesting, really necessary for human development. Okay? So for today, thank you very much. Your comments are interesting, and I would like to continue in a more profound way.
There's another question.
Another question? In a more profound way in the upcoming course, okay? Don't you think don't you think whoever dedicates to any kind of art has an elevated spirit? Yes, obviously it's necessary. And you know why? Anybody could have that, because aesthetics is an essential element of being. So when you work with that, when you develop that, you achieve this, as she said here, an elevated spirit. You know, the arts elevate the spirit of the human being. In fact, one of the things that we will investigate, now you're causing me to bring up other points, is we will see how art is the link between this physical world where we live here in the temporal, the material world, and eternity, the metaphysical world. What links us between these two states of being here in time and space and eternity? It is the arts. The arts make this link for us. Just this point alone, can you imagine what is the importance of the art? Arts link us with this physical world to where we go afterwards. Okay, so for today, that's a wrap. Okay, let's continue the next time. Next Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock will be the first online of the 10-hour course, and I believe you can come into that first course without paying yet, if I'm not mistaken. But even so, the price is so very, very reasonable. Nobody will have a problem with that. Just go into the sign up, register, and participate. Okay. So for today, thank you very much. And thanks to the technicians who helped out today. Yeah.